عنه قال فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم 5 صلوات في اليوم والليلة. فقال الرجل هل علي غيرها؟ فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا إلا أن تطوع. فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وصيام رمضان. فقال الرجل هل علي غيره؟ فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا إلا أن تطوع. وذكر له رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الزكاة. فقال الرجل هل علي غيرها؟ قال لا إلا أن تطوع. فأدبر الرجل وهو يقول والله لا أزيد على هذا ولا أنقص. فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أفلح إن صدق. وفي رواية أخرى دخل الجنة إن صدق. Today's hadith is found in the authentic collection of Imam al-Bukhari, where a companion by the name of Talha ibn Ubaidillah radiallahu anhu narrates that a man came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and asked him about Islam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the first thing he did was he mentioned the 5 daily prayers. He said 5 prayers during the day and night. So the man asked, are there any other prayers required upon me? So the Prophet ﷺ said, no, unless you want to perform the voluntary prayers. Then the Prophet ﷺ mentioned the fasting of Ramadan. So the man asked, are there any other fasts required upon me? So the Prophet ﷺ said, no, unless you want to perform the voluntary fasting. Finally, the Prophet ﷺ mentions zakah, or the obligatory charity. So the man asked, are there any other acts required upon me? So the Prophet ﷺ said, no, unless you want to perform the voluntary charity. So the man turns away, and he says, by Allah, I will not add anything to this, nor will I decrease from it. So the Prophet ﷺ says, or he replies, he will be successful, or he will succeed if he is truthful. Or in another narration, he will enter paradise if he is truthful. Now, what can we learn from this encounter? A mistake we often make is obsessing over the extra acts of worship while neglecting the obligation. For example, someone prays tahajjud but misses fajr. Someone posts public reminders online but neglects his parents, for example. Or someone memorizes Quran and doesn't lower their gaze. There's many examples of this. Islam didn't start with the obligatory acts. Islam didn't start with the extra acts of worship. It started with the obligation. On the other hand, if you've been praying the 5 daily prayers for years now, you don't become complacent. The next question you ask isn't what is the bare minimum. The next question you ask is what acts of worship can I do that will make me more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The obligatory acts are like the foundation of the house, while the extra acts of worship are what beautify the house. Everyone's next step is different. And this takes us to another important point. Having access to or having knowledge is not the same as acting upon it. Today, we have access to unlimited Islamic knowledge. Thousands of lectures online, books, apps, tafsir, translations. We can learn anything from just one search. Yet, we know far more than we actually practice. Compare that to the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. They only lived with Islam for a few years, but they accomplished great things. For example, Sa'd ibn Mu'adh radiallahu anhu. He accepted Islam 6 years before he passed away. But the Prophet ﷺ mentions that at his death, the throne of the Most Merciful shook. We all know the famous hadith, اهتز العرش لموت سعد بن معاذ رضي الله عنه. And he only lived for 6 years as a Muslim. 6, not 60, not 30. So ask yourself, how many periods of 6 years have I lived? Way more, right? And the difference isn't the access of knowledge that we have. The difference is that the companions learned everything, and immediately they learned so much, and it became action immediately. Unlike us, we have to know everything first before we act upon it. So, as a takeaway, before we ask ourselves, what acts of worship can I add? Perhaps we should ask ourselves, what acts of worship that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made obligatory upon me can I perfect? I hope that was a benefit. I'll end with that because it's getting late. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.